the cliches have helped me understand my human motivation. And me at age 70, and after reading all of these different books and all the self discovery and the things that I've done to explore myself, you would think that I kind of had a handle on it. And maybe I have a handle, but I don't have it handled. So the cliches have been helping me. Welcome. You've landed on Zero Limits Living. I'm Dr. Joe Vitale. Every week, I bring you inspiration and information and help transform your life. This show has become so popular so quickly, you can now see it or hear it on 1,000 platforms across the planet, including Roku, Amazon, Apple TV, YouTube, and probably anything you can name and anything that you're using right now. I'm putting all the shows in one place to make it easy for you to watch them. You can go to ZeroLimitsLivingTV.com and you can binge. You can also sign up to be notified whenever there's a new show, ZeroLimitsLivingTV.com. Also, you might want to check out my coaching program. It's been around for 20 years, trademarked it 15 years ago. It's proven, it's tested, it's a system that works, but find out what it can do for you. Go to miraclescoaching.com. My latest program, in case you're curious, is mentaltimetravelsystem.com, mentaltimetravelsystem.com. And my latest book for the moment is called Unexpected Kindness. It's on Amazon, hardcover, paper, audio, or just go to unexpectedkindnessbook.com. And now I want to get to today's show and today's guest because I am so excited I'm beside myself. There's a shelf of books behind me, and there's about 20 books on the one shelf. Those 20 books are the ones that have most impacted me in my 70 years. I read a lot of books. I've gone through books from the library, the bookstore, used bookstores, books I've collected, books I've given away. I can go on and on with all the books that I've touched, read, partially read, but only 20 of them. 20 of all of these books have actually deeply altered the course of my life and awakened me in some way, shape, or form. And the author I have today as my guest has written 2 of those books. She doesn't even know that. She's finding it out just like you have. So what we're going to do is explore the mind. How come we find it so hard to be happy? How come we find it so easy to get into arguments? How come so much of social media is around bickering and so much of family interaction today is seeming like it's a war? What's going on? A whole lot of this is how the mind works, and we're going to explore that today. Let me tell you about my guest. She is Deborah Adele. She holds a master's degree in both liberal studies and theology. She carries yoga certifications in Kundalini yoga, Hatha yoga, yoga therapy, and meditation. She is also trained as a Gestalt practitioner and a somatic educator. For over 14 years, Deborah brought her combined knowledge of business and her in-depth knowledge of yoga philosophy to build Yoga North, a now thriving international yoga center. A long-time student of yoga philosophy, Deborah is enthralled with the wisdom of the ancient yoga masters and seeks to relate this wisdom into practical lived experience in the 21st century. She's the author of the groundbreaking book, The Yamas and Niyamas, Exploring Yoga's Ethical Practice, and that's the first of her 2 books that's on my special shelf. And the most recent book, The Kleshas, Exploring the Elusiveness of Happiness, which I just finished reading because I savored it bite by bite. Deborah is a keen and innovative thinker, and she's bringing all of these concepts to life. And she's here with me now. Deborah, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Joe.
I am beyond grateful. I think you have a sense from our correspondence before we did this and from my introduction that your books are deeply impacting me. And the first one that I just mentioned about the yamas and niyamas, it's on the shelf. It's on the special shelf because it has so profoundly stirred my soul. And I couldn't believe you went to bat again and you hit another home run with the Kleshas. This is amazing. And I have so many notes and so many questions. I think what I want to do is start with, how did you get into yogic philosophy? I didn't even know that was a thing.
I didn't either for a long time. Um, I happened upon a teacher, Yogi Raj Achala, who was really into the philosophy, and it just clicked for me.
Yeah.
And I found for myself that the yoga masters are so smart and they understand human behavior. So 5,000 years ago, I mean, we think all these problems are new with AI and chips and all, everything, but it's all an inside job. And, and the yoga masters knew that 5,000 years ago when their problems were totally different, but still caused by what sits inside of us, really in our minds and in our hearts.
What I have found from my reading is that the human nature has not changed.
Right.
The tools we use have changed. We now have, as you mentioned, AI, and we have all the internet and all these things that 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 5,000 years ago, they didn't have. But they were still human beings struggling with the human experience.
Right.
And this is why I'm so fascinated. But the yogic philosophy is the one I've been the weakest in until I ran across you. And now I'm just absorbing this because it seems to be illuminating how the mind works either better, more clearly, more efficiently than some of the other things I've read. And I want to get into that with you, but I have to ask you because there's a whole lot of references to one of the teachers. Is it pronounced Pandanjali?
Pandit, yeah, Rajmani Chiganayat, yeah, or Patanjali. That's who you're talking about. Yes, he's
Patanjali, is that the correct
Patanjali.
pronunciation? I was pronouncing it like he's Italian. But Panajali,
Patanjali.
he's an Italian now. But who was he? Because it seems like a whole lot of source material came from him.
Yes, he was a philosopher, and he's credited with looking at all of the variety of ways yoga was being practiced for thousands of years and wanting to put them all together. So, just saying what was congruent among all of those different practices. So, he wrote this little thing called the Yoga Sutras. And they're just these little, it was an oral book. Everything was handed down orally. So, every word carefully constructed. And he just gave the essence of yoga, the essence of what it is. And there's never been a book that's been held in as high esteem in the yoga world before or since this little Yoga Sutra.
And
And that's
when did that book come out? When was his
came out
time period?
about 200 BC. I mean,
200.
200 CE. Yeah, Common Era, 200. Mhm.
Okay, 200. And I would imagine that it's not as clear as we need it to be to understand it today. I've not read that particular. I've read your books. I haven't read that book. If I read that book or anybody watching or listening goes and picks up that book, are they going to be able to understand it?
That's why we have commentaries on it. So it's said that Patanjali would teach his students, they'd sit at his feet and he'd give this one little essence and then he'd explain it. And then give another one the next night and explain it. So now we have the people who write these long, long commentaries explaining what all of this means to us. And so the more commentaries we read, the more we have kind of a sense of the flavor of what he meant.
Mhm. And is that what you're doing here? Are you deciphering him for modern times with your two books?
I'm trying. I'm not a scholar, so I read the scholars and then I try to make that make sense to me in my everyday lived life.
You
So
are succeeding.
I
You
feel
are,
like thank you, Joe. Thank you.
no, you are succeeding because we're looking at your new book, the cliches here. And one of the definitions I'll ask you for in a second is, what is a cliche? I've read the book, so I can give my definition. But I just want to preface this by saying the cliches have helped me understand my human motivation.
Mhm.
And me at age 70, and after reading all of these different books and all the self discovery and the things that I've done to explore myself, you would think that I kind of had a handle on it. And maybe I have a handle, but I don't have it handled.
Mhm.
So the cliches have been helping me. So what are the cliches? What's a good definition so people understand?
Good definition would be the afflictions. So, klesha is a Sanskrit word that comes from the root word klish, and that means to suffer, to be tormented, to be afflicted. So, a shortcut English word is afflictions. And it's this sense of what's gone wrong. That's
Yeah.
why, when we seek to be happy, because none of us want to be miserable. None of us, nobody wants that. So, why, when we're seeking to be so happy, do we fall so short? And that's and again, the yoga masters, they didn't make this up. They asked the same question,
Mm.
and this was way before books or anything. And so they just watched and they paid attention and they said, oh, we've got this misunderstanding about life and about who we are. And then we're always trying to make life fit for us instead of us kind of making the best out of what life's bringing. And so on and on and on until we get so rigid and set in our ways. That's almost like rigor mortis sets in while
Right.
we're alive. We dry up.
Mental rigor mortis is what it seems. So
Yeah.
I've opened to page 20 where you list them, and I'm going to just say them real quick,
Okay.
but I'm not going to pronounce them correctly at all.
That's fine.
I'm going to say avidya, the not knowing, the ignorance of who we are, is the first one. Asmita,
Mhm.
giving definition to who we think we are. Raga, seeking to feel good. Devesha, seeking to avoid feeling bad. And I don't even know how to pronounce the last one. I don't even know how to start.
Mhm.
Ab-
Abinavesha.
Abinvasha,
Abinavesha.
Benovation,
Yeah.
fearing death, loss, and change.
Mhm.
Now, of course, we'd have to explore each one of these to make sense. And of course, that's why you wrote this book. But the first one that jumps out, not the first one on the list, but the one that jumps out I have to ask you about is raga, seeking to feel good. What would be wrong with that?
What's wrong with it is how limited it is
Mm,
and how we react when we either get it or don't get it.
mm,
That's where the issue is. No, life is for our enjoyment, our happiness. There's nothing wrong with that. It's our reaction to and that and them thinking that we did it ourselves. Um,
mm,
kind of feeling sorry or self-righteous around people who aren't having things go their way. So there's all these emotional things, feeling proud. So those are the things that the yoga masters are saying, watch these things. Um, don't need life to be your personal agenda.
mm. That's a
Find
big one.
happiness, find happiness in everything. What is that? Arishanti says, be content even when you're not. Enjoy your life even when you're not.
Be
It's
content even when you're not. That's a big one. Be content even when you're not.
yeah,
We have to wrestle with that one. Be content even when you're not,
yeah,
because it doesn't immediately communicate in a way that we want to accept it. It's like,
right.
why would I be content when I'm not? Because my being not content might be the driver to make me content.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
And this is all part of how the mind works. As I was reading your book, which I so love, thank you so much for writing it. For me alone, thank you. I made little notes of things that really jumped out for me, and I just wanted to hit on those. And on page 40, you were quoting one of the teachers who said, "It's all snow. It's
Yeah.
all snow." And I remember I paused there and I was looking at my life and I'm looking at the people that are gone because they passed on, parents and so forth. And I'm looking at, we just moved into a new place. We moved into California. I've been in Texas my whole life. And it's like everything melted away.
Mm,
It's all snow is my reminder that I'm going to melt one day.
mm,
I'm not going to be here. And neither is everything around me. Why is this whole, that's my interpretation. Why is the idea that it's all snow so useful to us? What is your take on that?
it keeps us free to know that. Um, when we understand that the nature of the world is change, there's an essence of us. You talk about that with the great something inside. That doesn't change, but everything out here does change.
Mm.
And so when we're seeking our happiness out here or we're trying to freeze happiness, that's when we get into trouble. So when we realize that it's snow, it's melting and then it's coming down again and forming new things, and then we can enjoy the next thing and let this go. And that's really where the enjoyment comes from, is the steadiness inside and then the watching the play and the evolution of things outside.
That's so beautiful. I have never heard the concept "it's all snow" before, but it's also a reminder that I better really be in the moment and be grateful for the moment and enjoy the moment and savor the moment. It's going to melt.
Yes, yes,
It
yes.
won't be here. It'll be gone. This is why these concepts in your book are so illuminating to me, and I'm so excited to share them with other people. One of the other things that really made me sit up and take notice was on page 29, wherein you had quoted somebody who had said that there was an impulse for transcendence within
Ye
us, an
yes.
impulse for transcendence. Oh, I so love the phrase. For
Mm,
one thing, it's a hopeful phrase, it's an optimistic phrase, it's a growth oriented phrase. It's saying, there's something in me that wants to blossom.
yes,
There
yes,
is an impulse for transcendence. But as I understand it from your book, and this is where I want you to clarify because I might have it wrong, is that impulse might get misinterpreted.
mhm,
We might actually go for something that we think is going to make us feel better or higher or more enriched, but it's
mm,
actually kind of self-destructive.
yeah,
Is that correct? Can we
yes, absolutely, very well said. Mhm, very
and
well said.
and so what do we do with that? There's an impulse, maybe for people listening or hearing or watching this for the first time, that's news. It was news to me. There's an impulse for transcendence within me. But if I'm not careful, I might, I don't know, become obsessed with donuts or something and just, I'm
Yes,
going and I'm trying to satisfy, maybe this is it. I'm trying to satisfy the impulse for transcendence, but because I don't understand it, I'm reaching for whatever the latest advertiser put in front of me.
exactly, exactly. That hunger, that gets fed through the kleshas, and that, again, is why it's so important to understand the kleshas, because we're really hungry to know ourselves, and
Mm,
that's really what we're hungry for, and everything else is wonderful, but it doesn't satisfy the real hunger of knowing
mm.
who of
So
knowing
how
our
do we satisfy the real hunger? If it's a hunger to know ourselves, where's the path? What's the pill do I take? What
I
is the
think
practice?
I think that's what all the great spiritual traditions are about.
Mm,
I mean, yoga certainly is a path I follow, but all of these great traditions have turned out people who are different than the rest of us. You know, we
ah,
call them enlightened or awakened, but something's different about them. And
mhm,
they they're joyful, they're free. And whatever happens, they're free. They're all lined up in their own integrity. They serve others, they're compassionate, they're funny, they're childlike. And so any tradition we follow has answers of how do we not get sidestepped. But
mm,
also, I think understanding the kleshas is a way to see, like, our hunger can be caught up in food, and then we eat
mhm,
all the time, or just the need to be liked, or the need to whatever, be very whatever. And so it just gets, that hunger gets compromised by
mm,
trying to
mhm.
find the fulfillment outside of us.
So how do we understand ourselves even better? And I know what you're saying here is that there's lots of methods, there's lots of traditions, there's lots of philosophies, and they're all aiming at the same place, and they're all trying to help us. And many people have been helped, and they've turned out to be enlightened. What about the rest of us? The people that are, there's people sitting in Wisconsin watching the show, and there's some woman in South Dakota that's listening to this show, and she's going, "Well, what are these cliches, and how do I apply them so I can more awaken to my human nature and awaken the divinity within my human nature or under it?"
Mhm. When we know what we do, we have a choice. And
Mm,
that's why I love to look at where we're going off. So if we understand those things and pay attention to them in ourselves and others, reflect, I think we all need reflection time every day, journal time, however we take that cup of coffee and just watch ourselves, watch what we thought today, watch what we did. I can remember there was a time that all I cared about was getting up in the morning, writing out my task list because full day, getting it all done, going to bed at night, and it was good because it was done. But I never asked myself, was I kind today? No.
Hmm.
Did I? And those kinds of really important questions.
Mhm.
Did I spend time in prayer? Did I think about others? So there's a lot of knee jerk reactions that I find I have. I think that's a good way to start unpacking kleshas. Um,
Mm.
just watching when I might gobble food. What's that about? I'm
Mhm.
not hungry for all that food. I'm hungry for something else. What am I hungry of, or what am I afraid of? Or there's just so many ways to pay attention. When I wrote the Yamas and Niyamas book, I read constantly, like I think like you say you do. And I quit reading anything the 2 years I wrote it. And all I did was pay attention because
Wow.
I didn't want to read about what those things were. And so I watched it myself. I would go to stores and coffee shops and just listen to conversations, watch how people treated their children, and just it just all started to become very clear when I watched instead of read all the time. So that started that really deep reflection period.
Well,
And
that's
that's
quite a commitment too, to turn off all the book reading and everything and just focus on your inner experience. That's kind of a noble adventure right there.
it was
And
interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
well, but you had one with this book too, the cliches, because I was looking for a couple interviews that you've already done that I wanted to get a sense of you and how you would speak and things. And you talked about one of the reasons you wrote the book or began the process of researching it was you saw all the political infighting, you saw all the families arguing with each other. All of us have seen the social media grenades that people throw at each other. And as I remember from the partial interview I saw with you, you said that was part of what ignited your thirst to learn more about why are we operating like this? What's
Yes,
going on in our mind? And then the second thing, as I remember, and you say it in the end of your book, you had an accident.
I did.
Can you talk about both of those or either one of those and how they led to this, the cliches?
Well, the first part that you talked about
Yeah.
is yes, definitely true. It's why do we fight for our beliefs instead of examine them? It just
Mm,
seemed kind of crazy to me that brothers and sisters would quit talking. Um, Politicians would quit talking because we were so sure of our beliefs that we'd rather do that than have love in our family or friends. And so then I started asking where do these beliefs come from?
mm.
And why are we so sure they're right? Why don't we ask, do we really even believe what we think we believe? And so that was a huge part of it, watching this incivility. But then, yeah, as life would have it, I was hiking on the Superior Hiking Trail and took a really bad fall. And
Mm.
that stopped my traveling and my teaching. And I was home. And then COVID came right after I got well. Then COVID came.
Yep.
So I had a good amount of time to really think about the glaciers and really my own misery too, because I was not a happy camper.
This is all beautiful. I think the gift of COVID was a lot of books got written.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've interviewed various people who said, "But I wanted to write a book." Then COVID came. They wrote their book.
Yeah.
So I think there were some gifts there that you have to look under the rug to find, but they were there.
Yeah.
But the thing about beliefs, we are so married to our beliefs, we don't know their beliefs. This
Yes.
is what I find out in my own life and with people that I talk to is that their belief is their reality.
Right.
So they don't question reality because why would I question that the table's wood and hard and everything? That's the nature of the beliefs they have. So it seems difficult to look at our beliefs when we don't even know their beliefs. One thing that, and I wrote this down too, it was another aha moment in your book, 178. All beliefs are designed to fail. Oh, I looked at that and I went, what? all
Isn't that
beliefs are
great?
just it's a wonderful insight, and it was an awakening for me. It's another one of those illuminations I've gotten from both of your books, and this one in particular, on this page in particular. What does that mean? All beliefs are designed to fail.
Believing Before Seeing, a new book by Candace Barr, teaching you how to believe into existence. Available now for pre order.
I think that ties in a lot with your zero limits living because
Yes.
we we really do need a boundary or a limit to break. And that's wonderful. And then we can expand to the
Mhm.
next boundary or limit to break. And so I think that's what it means. We need beliefs, but I think they need to be examined. We need to ask, what's the result of my beliefs? Is it harm to myself or in others? Or is it, does it make the world better? Does it support me? And, but at some point, then, whatever that belief is, if we're really growing, at some point that gets knocked down and the next kind of boundary comes. And that's exciting. I mean,
Right,
that's really exciting.
right. I love it. I had never heard it expressed like that. All beliefs are designed to fail. But it also raises the question, and you mentioned that the title of this show is Zero Limits Living. The title of my next book coming out next year is Zero Limits Living. And I wrote a book called Zero Limits. So I have a theme going on here, and it's an exploration of, do we actually have any limits? When we state we have a limit, are we just stating a belief and we are assuming that's reality? But maybe it's not reality. Maybe it's a belief, and maybe it can be questioned. On another page, it was 195, you were talking about the mind's capabilities, and you were questioning, are there any limits? What do you think? Are there any limits?
You know, I I don't mean to cop out on this question, but
No, that's fine.
isn't that the point that we all get to explore that for ourselves?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we don't like if somebody says there are or there aren't, it's like let's find out. That's the opportunity. And that's what's beautiful about what you're offering is like, oh, okay, well, let's go see. Are there? Well, what are there limits in my life? What am I capable of?
Mhm.
And so it's exciting.
Where
Uh,
is all this going? If we are collapsing beliefs because we're growing to the next level and we are acquiring new beliefs, and then we grow and we drop those beliefs, and then we expand and we drop those beliefs, where are we going? Where, where's the end of the belief bubble? What's on the other side of the pot of gold?
I think that that great something inside, that source that we all are
Yeah.
part of, that oneness. I mean, that's the really fun thing is that we're all connected in source and we're all individuals. I mean, we live that kind of both and
Mhm.
so there's a way that we are bounded by our physical bodies, our aging, some of the things in the environment, but there's a way we're unbounded by what's possible for the mind and when we're sourced in source, which is totally unlimited. So
That's beautiful. I've been reading a lot of Yogananda recently
yeah,
and
yeah.
falling in love with him and all of
Um,
his talks, and he's so clear and he's so articulate.
yes.
And I remember one, I have to paraphrase, I don't have the exact quote, but he says, "Prove the God principle within you by doing something never done before."
Oh, beautiful,
And I
beautiful.
so loved it. First of all, it's the kind of thinking I like. It's big thinking, and let's go for something outrageous, let's go bigger. But he was saying, use your divinity to
Right,
do that.
right, right,
And that's such a special and beautiful and empowering way of looking at this. It's also not a dismissal of the material reality. He's saying use the spiritual part of you to
right,
achieve something that's on the material part of us.
right.
Another thing that you say in the book, it's on page 200, and this would probably explain a lot. None of us see clearly. None of us see clearly. The way I look at it is I think there's 8 billion people on the planet, and I typically say there's 8 billion different versions of reality
I agree.
because
Mm,
we're looking through our filters. Is that what that means? That
exactly,
statement of none of us see clearly?
right. We see through our kleshas. Our kleshas create a pair of glasses that have a certain colors, and that's what we see. We project our kleshas out onto everything we see.
How do we become let's take one of the kleshas. Do you have a favorite or we just start in order?
I really like devesha, that avoiding what we don't want. That's the
Avoiding
fourth.
what we
Yeah, just avoiding what we don't want.
and what does that mean? How are we doing that? How does that appear in our lives? Avoiding what we don't want.
We're spending a lot of time manipulating and controlling so that what we don't want to happen doesn't happen. And I as I watch that in myself, because the wanting what we want and not wanting what we don't want, they're just twins. They just go together and keep us all into I'm
Yes.
happy, I'm sad, I'm happy, I'm sad. But have you ever noticed that? I don't know if you do this. I noticed it a long time ago that my husband and I talk a lot during the day because we're just love each other. And I was watching that he would say, "How's your day going?" And I would answer according to if what I wanted to happen was happening and what I didn't want to happen wasn't. So my whole attitude to the day depended on if I was getting what I wanted, like getting the things done, no
Mhm,
interruptions, all that kind of stuff. And
mhm.
it was a bad day if there were interruptions and stuff withheld my work or things happened I didn't want to happen. So I'm going, wow, what a small way to live life is with this up and down. So this
Mhm.
idea of avoidance is even stronger. I just don't want anything that I don't want to happen to me. And so what I'm doing then is accommodating my weaknesses. I'm letting myself be really a weak person because just even going to a restaurant and they have this wonderful salmon meal, and that's what I'm really hungry for. So I'm going, yep, let's go out to eat, let's have this salmon meal, and they're all out. And
Mm,
so then my whole experience is ruined, blah, blah, blah. They didn't even, and that's devasha. That's accommodating our weaknesses rather than looking at it as an opportunity to have something different to eat. Wow, wouldn't that be something? And be happy, even though just find something new to be happy about.
this is beautiful. So, what I understand, in order to do that, first of all, I would have to be aware of
Mhm.
what I'm doing or what my mind is doing. So, I have to be aware that I'm going for this particular,
Right.
I want the salmon meal. And then when it isn't there, the old Joe would be disappointed. It was like, I want to go to another restaurant. I want to go
Right.
someplace that has salmon. But what you're saying is now it's an opportunity to find out, well, what do you have on the special today? Which could be something that is now my new love
Exactly.
because
Exactly.
I tried it. But
Ex-
I don't know. So many of us were just on that. You used the phrase knee jerk before. I think it's that tripwire.
oh yeah.
We've never had anybody point out to us that this is what you're doing. And in
Mm.
fact, this brings up the question, you're talking to your husband, and what you've done in the past is talking about whether it's going well or it's going bad, depending on what your goals were, your intents, and your to dos. How do you answer the question now?
Uh, it's a good day. I I have 2 granddaughters. I have a lot of granddaughters, but the 2 smallest are 7 and 9, and when I ask them how their day is, they go, "Great." And so I've just started saying, "Great." And it's a way to be happy even when the day hasn't been a happy day. No, it's great because it's great to be alive.
Mhm.
It's such a gift. And the
But do
more
you, I'm just going to push a little bit on that and
okay,
find out, do you add to it? Do you elaborate or is that it? Do you give them the telegram? It's great and you're done. Or do you say it's great and you give the reasons why it's great? I'm fishing to find out what the nature of the conversation is because this is a relationship, a
mhm,
long relationship, as I understand it, with your husband, because you
mhm.
refer to him and experiences with him in the book. And so I just want to know, what is the conversation now?
It can be information without having
Mhm.
to be the
Judgment.
emotional complaining. There's a way to share that isn't vomiting on somebody else. And I think when we're stuck in the kleshas and the not getting what we want, we vomit a lot on other people and our friends and our partners. So information can be shared as intimacy as just this was part of my day. It was a little more challenging, but it doesn't have to be that kind of dwelling that ruins the whole conversation. It's just more of a catch up, more of a sharing.
And does he do the same thing?
Yeah, he does. He
Well,
does.
that's good. You're both on the same page then.
We're practicing. We're practicing. I mean, isn't that what we do, Joe? We
That
practice.
I
We
think
practice.
that's why meditation is called a practice, and virtually everything we do is a practice. When none of us are pros at it or perfect at it. I don't know what perfection is anyway, because if I say something's perfect, I'll find other people who don't agree. So
Right.
it must not be perfect. I don't know that perfection exists, but the practice does exist, and that's what we're
Right.
doing
And
even now.
we're seeking equanimity. We're seeking to be even keeled. And that's a beautiful practice.
Well, that reminds me, on page 125, you were in a workshop, and I think you said it was a long one and people were kind of overloaded, and
Yeah.
somebody said, "Oh, I get it. All
Yeah.
of this is about 3 things." I love this, you know where I'm going. The first is, don't disturb yourself. The second is, don't disturb others. The third is, see number 1.
Right.
Don't disturb yourself. This is so beautiful. Don't disturb yourself, don't disturb others. See number 1, is the third. Don't disturb yourself. All of this goes back to, I don't know how to say this. It's all about this self-inquiry and self-awareness. But the
Yes.
thing that I look at, Deborah, and this goes back to even what motivated you to write the book, is I'm working on myself, but it doesn't seem like other people are.
Mm.
Do you know?
Mhm.
And I especially
Got
if I
it
look at social
now.
I look at social media because I'm a marketer and I'm putting out Instagram videos and this, that, and the other. And so I hear things, and people don't seem to be very friendly with each other.
Mm.
Part of my duty is to see if I can inspire them to be different. Part of the show is to give them tools to help them. But I'm also working on myself. So I'm a little bit more undisturbed by them and my judgments of them. Is is there another way to look at that? Did you find another way to look at the social and political and family infighting you saw?
Uh, I just think it's a really big deal when we
Yeah.
start realizing our disturbance is we're responsible for it and other people aren't. Like that's to me this major step in
Oh,
understanding.
okay. Can you
So
say that again? Our disturbance, we're
yeah,
talking
when
about
you realize it's not everybody else's fault, it's mine.
wow. That is total responsibility. It's one of
Yeah,
the things I
it's
preach. It's one of the things I teach. It's one of the things I try to live.
yeah, it's huge. But for me, I didn't always realize that. I blamed everybody else for a long period of my life. And so it's like there's this evolution, this growing, and somehow grace found me that I could realize that. And when I look at all of this other stuff, people haven't quite realized that yet. A lot of people haven't realized that.
Yeah.
And so their own unhappiness, their own insecurity gets blamed on other people, gets projected out. And when we can bring those projections back, then the world begins to change. And so that's, I don't know, just the tolerance and the kindness,
Mhm.
the God, the divine mother, the higher reality loves all the people. I mean, she loves all her children. So, that's
I Part of my job when I do this show is to try to mentally read the minds of some of the listeners and viewers. And I could imagine somebody saying, "Yeah, that's all well and good, but it's not going to stop war. It's not going to stop the economic upheaval. It's not going to correct whatever the political mishap is in their view." And so they're going to hold on to their anger. They're going to hold on to their frustration and dismiss you, me, the cliches. Is there anything you could say or an example to help illuminate that? Just crack the window a little bit so there's the possibility of somebody going, "Okay, I need to look at that." Does something come to mind or a story or an
it,
insight or,
it can't happen outside of us if it's not already happening inside of us.
hmm,
Like if you want to stop the war in the world, you have to stop the wars in your own mind
yeah.
first. I mean, that's what comes to mind for me.
Yeah, no, that's a basic Gandhi-like response. When you wrote your book and the first book, these titles, like the cliches, for the average person, they can't relate to it.
no.
It makes no sense. In fact, when I bought your book, I took a picture of it, I put it on Instagram, said this, I was excited, I was reading it, and there were a couple of people who said, "What is it about?"
That, yeah.
Even though the subtitle says exploring the elusiveness of happiness. But what threw them off was the cliches as a word. So
Yeah.
did you write this and your other book for the yoga community? Or were you thinking of a mass audience and you just wanted them to reach for curiosity? It's like, what's the cliche?
I wrote the first book for our studio, and my
Okay.
publisher said they insisted on that title. I wanted to call it the 10 Jewels of Happiness.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And they said, no, we're going to call it what it is. So, yeah.
And I don't even know how I found your first book. I read a lot, and sometimes somebody or some book will recommend another book.
Yeah.
And it could have been in there, but I do recall thinking, what in the world does that title mean?
No.
And even the cliches for me wouldn't have pulled me in, but your name, Deborah Adele, would have, because I've already read your other book. And so did the publisher choose that title too?
Yeah, because that's what it is. But otherwise, the choice is afflictions and suffering, and nobody wants to really read about that. So it's
Right,
like,
right.
yeah.
And what is a story that really illuminates these cliches? So, in other words, in your own life or somebody that you've talked to or worked with, what comes to mind as somebody who had really some sort of, because the story may illustrate the potential for change.
Mm, interesting. I don't know that I have a story, but what comes to mind is
Mhm.
people by the time they're older, the ones who are so crabby and grouchy and can't talk about anything but their aches and pains and the weather and a lot of complaints.
Yeah,
And then the ones that are so spry and alive and doing new things, even though they're, however, really in their later years. And I
mhm,
think that shows the potential of what, when you understand the kleshas and you just understand that the natural movement in our lives is, according to the yogis, is towards getting smaller and smaller and smaller and more limited, more rigid, more afraid to lose things, more afraid to die.
yeah,
But also the potential for life and the purpose in life is to grow and become aware and enjoy and taste as much of life as you can. And we see that too in people who just continue to step past their fears and try new things. And so I think that's the choice that the kleshas really show us.
and that's beautiful, and what I love about your book is you do have a lot of personal examples. You did it in the first book as well. The personal examples bring them to life.
Mm.
So I'm not reading something that's thousands of years old and trying to apply it, let alone understand it, but you have this clarity from personal experience, and the way you're writing it has a simplicity to it that makes it easy for people to understand. That's why I tell people, go get the cliches. It's a wonderful book, and I've been marking it up and doing all kind of things. A couple questions. We're going to run out of time here, but the first is the cliches: exploring the elusiveness of happiness. Are you happy?
Oh, yes.
You said that so well and so
Mm.
quickly. I love that.
Oh, yes. I'm content, fulfilled, and happy. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And does your mind still bring up the cliches? Do you still have them?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
I understand. Well, you're in this is what I tell people, "Look, I'm not enlightened. I'm in the human experience just like you."
Yes.
And, friends who have known me for a while go, "Yeah, Joe, you're human. We know it. We
Yep.
see it." So, yes, that's there. Another question I wanted to ask you, and I like to ask all my guests this: did you have a question you were hoping I would ask? You knew I was going to interview you. You knew that I'm a fan because of the first book and my correspondence with you. You knew that I reached out to you because of the second book. And so you've had time to think about this. And did you really want me to ask the particular question, or were you hoping for the opportunity to say something in particular?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One
Ah,
was this whole idea of we are not our minds. We think
yeah.
we are, but we aren't. And that's just contents. And those contents can change. And so we get to look at it. But also, along with that, well, that replacement, I mean, that whole idea of there's so much negativity right now. I see that we're against so much, but that just breeds more negativity. So how do we shift to what we want, not what we don't want?
Yeah.
And several years ago, I was asked to be a keynote speaker for, can't remember, but they gave me the title of Redesigning the Good Life. And that's when I really started looking at this because I thought, I'm going to start asking people, what's the good life? And nobody had an answer for me.
Uh,
Just as long as it isn't what I have now, or I just don't want it to be like this. That's all I heard. And so I've really paid attention to that. And we're saying, oh, we don't like this, we don't want that. That's so horrible. But nobody's imagining, not very many people, not enough of us are imagining what we want. And that's the same thing with the training our mind, is that
yeah,
what do we want?
yeah.
Not what we don't want, so that it becomes more powerful. It's like something has to be more powerful than pizza. I say to myself, because I love pizza, but that's like the junk food. And then what's the broccoli? What's the kale? For the mind diet.
Yeah.
Um, and then the other thing that I wanted to say was in the beloved book, the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, the teacher, is talking to Arjuna, the student, and he says something to Arjuna. He says, "Your mind is your best friend and your worst enemy."
Mm,
And he says, "Don't sink yourself." And I think that is worth reflecting on
yeah.
every day. Like,
Don't
how do
sink
we
yourself.
don't sink yourself? And it's like, how do we be friends with our mind?
Yeah.
Like, where I saying, "Oh, mind make me really witty at this party," or "help me remember that name," or "I want to learn this new instrument." But we don't really have a relationship with the mind. It's more like mind on demand. And so what does it mean that your mind is your best friend and your worst enemy? Like, even to begin to ask
Yeah.
that question is so potent, I think.
It is. In fact, I hadn't thought of it in those terms. I've talked about a book Napoleon Hill wrote called Outwitting the Devil, and it turns out the devil is your mind.
Yeah,
And what he's talking about is outwitting your own mind. But there isn't, unless I'm missing something or forgetting something, there isn't something that says you can befriend your mind, love your mind, have a relationship with your mind. And so I love that concept and that idea, and I'm going to reflect and meditate on that. I want to ask you one more question here. I'm going to sneak in as many as I can. And this other question is, if we're not our mind and we can be aware of the cliches and how the mind might be working, and we can observe the mind, what are we?
with that essence of the creator, of source, of Buddha nature, Christ consciousness, for that piece of the oneness.
That's huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
That's huge, and it's good news.
Ah,
Too many of us, myself included, throughout life, have just identified with the mind. Didn't even know that I can be separate. It's like the mind's talking and I'm the mind. And then
exactly.
at a certain point, after lots of meditation and reading and this, that, and the other, I get to the point where I realize, oh, I'm not my mind.
Yeah.
And then I read Napoleon Hill, oh, my mind's my devil. But now I'm listening to you and it's like, wait a minute. I
Which
am this part of divinity that even Yogananda pointed to,
yeah,
and I could love my mind.
yes. Yeah, and make it your best friend. Yeah,
I love it.
yeah.
Deborah, I can't thank you enough. You have deeply influenced me with your first book, deeply influenced me with your second. Are you going to write a third?
I don't know, we'll see.
Yes, I understand that feeling. Well, don't wait for COVID and don't wait for an accident.
Okay.
If you get an inspiration to start writing, please do.
Thank you.
Where do you want people to go? You have a website that's under your name, Deborah
Yeah.
Adele. Do you have one for the Kleshas?
Uh-huh. Theclatius.com, the Yamas and the Yamas.com, and DeborahAdele.com. Yeah.
I love it. Well, you got the internet covered. Well, I hope to meet you one day in person, but for now, I am very grateful. Thank you. Do you have any last words? Something
Just
you want people to remember?
thank you, Joe.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, everybody, I am almost speechless. You've been watching Zero Limits Living. I'm Dr. Joe Vitale. The show's on 1,000 platforms, but just go to ZeroLimitsLivingTV.com to watch them all. Check out Miracles Coaching and some of my other products and services. Thank Lux Media Studios. Nick's running the camera and engineering today. Candace Barr is making this possible. I thank all of you for being here, illuminating the world one person at a time. I love you all. Expect miracles.